Running back is a position of need for the New Orleans Saints, and they could have an opportunity to take one at number 9 overall. That running back is Boise State's Ashton Jeanty. And the two questions that kind of keep swirling around is he has been compared to Alvin Kamara. So obviously, is Ashton Jeanty the next Alvin Kamara? And if he is, do the Saints draft him at number 9? Let's try to answer both those questions. I'm Tim. Let's talk Saints. So to try to answer best we can, is Ashton Jeanty the next Alvin Kamara? Talk a little bit about his traits and what he's done in college or what he did in college. Now, the measurements right now, this offseason for NFL, everybody seems to be disagreeing what the official measurements are. I'm riding with he's 5'9", 215 pounds. Probably find about 14 different measurements for him if you check 13 other different sites. They all kind of agree, though, he's maybe a little small. And I think the reason why they're saying that is kind of like that 5'11", 220-ish range for as a starting point for NFL running backs. He's a little below that. I don't know if it matters a whole lot, but they say football is a game of inches, so it might. But the traits that keep coming up as his strengths, and said, well, let's go look at, and I think just about any write-up you're going to see, they'll talk about some other stuff, but these 4, 5, 6 are all in there. And I think they check off against what Alvin does well when they bring up that comparison, because talk about his great balance and the way he uses it to run through contact. Big check mark, because Alvin's always been very, very good at that. Great vision. Alvin has great vision also. Soft hands as a pass catcher, perhaps one of the most dangerous traits that Kamara has possessed in his NFL career, because there were times when flat out we could line him up as a wide receiver and have him run the wide receiver tree, and he's catching passes downfield just like a wide receiver instead of a running back. Patience. Alvin, sometimes to a fault. I know there's times we get a little frustrated, like, hey, go, go, go. But he knows how to take his time and then bam, through the hole. Goes hand in hand with his vision and why he's an NFL running back and making a lot of money, and none of us are. And then that big play ability that we knew Alvin has, and we thought it maybe, it's like, he's getting up in age about this time last season, and we're going, we don't know. I think pretty much he accounted for any non-explosive plays, or any explosive plays that outside of the wide receivers, especially Shaheed's. I think he's the only running back that gave us any at all, and he gave us a couple, especially early in the year. Size limitations, as a weakness, they bring up it could limit his pass blocking. He was asked to do it at Boise State, and to his credit, almost everybody admits, and look, he showed he was willing to do it, and he was competent at it at that level. So that may or may not even be that big of a deal that he's slightly smallish, but it could come into play when, he's that 6'4", 260-pound beast edge rusher coming off that he might have to pick up. Yeah, I can see where they may be a little concerned with that. I think this one's a little bigger. And when we talk about the playoff game against Penn State, I'll bring it up a little more in depth, but his size combined with his running style may present some ball security issues in the NFL. Now, last season overall, 4 fumbles and he lost 3 of them. But in that playoff game against Penn State, and to be clear, that was the absolute best defense he ran against all of 2024. For the most part, he had games against Oregon and Oregon State, fairly good. Out of the 133 Division One or FBS or FCS, I forget what they're even the 3-letter code for him is now. But regardless, there's 133 teams. Most of the teams he played against, defending the run and points scored, all kind of fall in the top 50 or so. But Penn State was top 10. Like I said, Oregon State's a little further back, but not all the way around that 40 to 50 range. Majority of his opponents came there, and a few further down the list. Needs to be mentioned. because that was a big detriment a lot of people have against him. Oh, he hasn't played against anybody. I think that's doing a disservice. He hasn't played consistently against, say, Big Ten defenses or SEC defenses or even some of the Big 12 defenses, probably compared to what he was playing against. But numbers are numbers. And the reason why I bring up the Penn State game, that is the one game in his career I had seen mostly highlights, managed to catch parts of Boise State games over the last couple of years, because it was a playoff game in kind of prime time, able to sit down and watch 4 quarters. And I thought he was very impressive in those 4 quarters, at least as far as the eye test is concerned. But being as he was playing against by far the best defense he played against all year, he has a kind of that knack to like we said, with that balance and kind of runs through contact. Well, there was an awful lot of contact because there was a lot more bodies trying to run through this defense than, you know, nothing against him, but obviously against some of the further down the defenses he had played against. So there were some guys with some extra opportunities to try to rip the ball out. They got it twice and he lost once. So of his 4 total and 3 lost, 2 and 1 happened in that game. But still in that game, he was a workhorse. And he was one of the reasons, along with some pretty decent quarterback play in that game, that, I mean, Boise State was a good team. Penn State was a great team. And 4 quarters, he did everything he could do in that game, and maybe to the detriment, that hard running style trying to fight for extra yards, exposing a possibility for Penn State to rip those 2 fumbles out. But I mean, he finished the game 30 carries for 104 rushing, 3 catches for 22. Nowhere near his explosive numbers that he had all year. But like I said, it was a step up in competition, and he wasn't the reason. And really, it was a valiant effort by Boise State, in my opinion. But nobody can say, oh, look, I don't think, can say, look, he's nothing. He finally played against some competition. Look at some of the other running backs that Penn State played against, and he had better offensive lines and didn't do as much. Just saying. Now, where his size actually causes me concern, and I have not necessarily seen anywhere where this was brought up, but just looking at his total touches, rushing and receiving in 2024, he had a total of 397. That was 374 in rushing, only 23 in receiving. More on that in a second. And to me, that might be a legit concern, especially a guy who everybody's kind of looking at as a little smaller. That's a lot. And he is evasive, and he does run through contact, but running through contact implies he's receiving a lot of contact. So there is a little part of me that's some concern, because we have seen, I mean, no slight on them, but this is a common occurrence with some of the Alabama running backs we've seen over the years. They got a lot of use in college, especially in the 20-teens period. Come in, be pretty good NFL running backs for a few years, but they just seem to wear out fast. And I think it's because they played all of multiple pro seasons actually in college. Basically, Jeanty did too last year. I think it's something you keep an eye on. May not be that big of a deal, but I think it's a concern. The other thing is, and when we're going to get to this when we look a little closer in the next segment, the NFL is relying a lot on those, whether you like it or not, the pro day numbers, the combine numbers, what's the 40, the split, the 10-yard split, the 20-yard split, the cone drill, lifting, what is it, 220, however many times, all their bells and whistles that they want to see. Sometimes I think it's a little ridiculous, but sometimes I can acknowledge that, yeah, you want to see what we saw on film. Is he throwing some measurements that kind of backs that up? Or in the case of Jeanty being a little smaller, they might want to say, hey, yeah, we want to see this, we want to see that, because he is slightly smaller than most of the running backs we're dealing with. He didn't do anything. And that's a trend. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. kind of started last year with first rounders. He's not the only one, really. They're very limited in what they're putting out there, kind of mostly relying on, hey, you saw the tape, you saw what I can do. I don't need to go through the rest of this. Interesting to see how it plays out. And in their cases, I think their film is so good in most cases, this probably isn't hurting him, but it is something to throw out there that some teams may go, look, we just don't want to stumble into the guy that looks like he was running a 4.4 against, his competition for 3 years on film. And then we get him on an NFL football field and find out he's a 4.7 and we're kind of in trouble. I get that part of it too. But I can tell you right now, and I'm going to finish it on the thing that I like the most. And I really remember this from 2023, the way he was used then as a kind of compared to the way he was used in 2024, but his pass catching ability. Because in 2024, Boise State did the right thing. They were a good football team. They used him as a workhorse, a lot like we started using Alvin Kamara these last few years, where he wasn't used the same, didn't quite look the same running the ball that he was early, but now kind of the workhorse. We've had those games where we've had to feed him 30 times to have a shot at a win. Kind of what Boise State had to do last year. And look, man, he toted it. But in 2024, he only had 23 receptions for 138 yards, a 6-yard average in one touchdown. But the year before, he had 43 receptions, almost twice as many for 569 yards, averaging 13.2 a catch with 5 touchdowns. That's some Alvin-like numbers. When also to add that in 2023, he only had 220 carries compared to the 374 in 2024, but for a total of 1,347 rushing yards and 14 touchdowns. 19 total touchdowns on the year, knocking the door on 2,000 total yards, doing it still more through the run than receiving, but a much closer balance and a much closer resemblance of how the modern NFL really likes the Alvins, the Saquons, back in the day, Ezekiel Elliott, all those guys that are very similar size and can do so much, both running kind of with power, running with an explosion, and be able to catch the ball out of the backfield or downfield and do both. Now, I know I threw just some really big elite running back names at Ashton Jeanty by comparison, but let's be honest, he's being sold, and that's not the right word. He's being presented as a prospect, as one of those type guys that can be done, that can do that kind of stuff, that can, you know, it is an advertisement. I guess they are selling us that, hey, man, he is your next Kamara or Barkley or whoever comparison that they want to make. But for me, just kind of looking at it, like if you want to sell me, he is the next Alvin Kamara. There's a lot there, both in the numbers and then watching him play in the film, where a lot of this is coming from to say, yeah, I'll buy that. I'll buy that. I'm not saying he is, but I'll buy, yes, potentially you could have a very similar back capable of producing very similar numbers in an offense. And the kicker that I like the most, now I don't remember if this was ever said about Alvin back when he was a rookie prospect in this same situation, but one of the things that I've seen on several sites mentioned, he is capable running behind any blocking scheme, whether you're going to do man gap or you're going to do zone. And we saw last year Kellen Moore roll into Philly and basically revamp the offense halfway or a third of the way through the season, roughly, and integrate both schemes and what he wanted to do and the flexibility from week to week to rely on one over the other. He was asked about it when he gave his first press conference here after we hired him. He agreed, and that is one of the few things that he actually said, kind of sounding definite, was this is a scheme that I want to bring into New Orleans because of his flexibility, because you can do so much in it. And I'm going back to, basically the Thunder and Lightning days of Kamara and Ingram and going, if you get the next Alvin, and that's a kind of a similar philosophy that he used in Philly. And I'm not saying Jeanty is Barkley, but using that same style, I think he's got the tools to make it work and be a high level elite football player. I'm ringing the positive bell here, I know, but I feel pretty strong in that possibility. You're even remotely suggesting drafting a running back in the first round, much less at number 9 overall, is the issue of, yeah, but you should never do that because you can still find value in round 2 or 3 or 4, depending how deep the class is. And you know the argument, you've heard it often. Um, and it can be valid at times. And this year's a very interesting year to have that conversation because I think it's universally kind of agreed this is the best running back draft class that the NFL has seen in years as far as depth, anchored by a guy like Jeanty on the top end of it. And it's one of those deals where it's kind of hard to quantify, especially how good it is, how deep it is. Next Gen Stats has tried, and I can honestly say, I mean, you're looking at their top 5 is Ashton Jeanty, Cam Scatterboo, who I also like a lot. Out of Arizona State, Travion Henderson from Ohio State, Omarion Hampton from North Carolina, and Quinton Judkins out of Ohio State. And what they are trying to do here with this scoring system that they've come up with is basically the overall score, and they have Jeanty basically as elite. They've got pretty good scores at 88, 86, 85, and 83 from Scatterboo to Henderson to Hampton to Judkins. Nothing really wrong or anything to sneeze at on that. So basically, this is how they're kind of coming up with it. Real shallow version, but they're basically assigning an athleticism score, production score, which is purely on their college numbers, or mostly on their college number, a draft score, which that's the elite number that we were looking at for Jeanty, where they kind of roll it all together and try to find a combination to be able to judge and evaluate these guys. If you notice, there's this huge, giant, grayed out area with no numbers in it. And now it pretty much touches all 5 of these guys. But it's a huge gap for Jeanty and a significant one for Scatterboo. That is the actual data, like you see there, the 40-yard time, their top speed, vertical jump, broad jump, 3-cone, all that stuff. And none of it is there for those guys. So they're kind of projecting that athletic score based off basically the film. To me, that kind of calls into question whether that overall score of 95 with that athletic score of 83 is accurate. Kind of calls into question also the very low athleticism score that they have on Cam Scatterboo, because his college production numbers were insanely high, like Genty's also. So huge grain of salt in all this, but I appreciate the effort of them trying to put something on here other than just, hey, you know, we think this, we think that. This, I watched the film, I broke it down. I can't get 100% behind the accuracy of it, obviously, but I think it's a starting point, maybe worth the conversation to have, because when you're looking at the next 5, Dylan Sampson, RJ Harvey, Vishal Tootin, DJ Giddens, Caleb Johnson, and the overall score they're given on the 10th overall guy is a 76 for Caleb Johnson. I think you can safely say that yes, this is an insanely deep running back class. And maybe, maybe the value guys, the guys that say there's value in round 2, 3, 4, this may be a year where you're going, you have to stop and think and go, wow, we could conceivably get one of those or any of those guys, a combination of those guys at 40 or in the 3rd round. And for whatever reason, Cam Scatterboo does not get the love of those other guys. And there's even thinking that he could still be sitting there in the 4th round. And I'm thinking it'd be an absolute steal. So there is that, as much as, look, full disclosure, I really liked Ashton Jeanty the last couple of years in Boise State. I really was impressed what he did in Penn State. I would be really excited to draft him at 9 and bring him in here. But you just got to look and go, man, you get a Judkins or a Hampton at 40, a Henderson. It's like, what is the difference? And I mean by difference, the gap. Is Jeanty going to be that much better? I kind of feel like he could be, which puts you in a very interesting position at 9. And again, full disclosure, I'm a big Ashton Jeanty fan, so there may be a lot of my personal bias in this. I admit it. I'm trying to be as objective as I can. One of the reasons why I was looking at like the next gen stats stuff, but it's just a lot to like about that young man watching him run the ball. And in my opinion, he is. I think he is the top running back. I don't think anybody's really disagreed with that. Um, if they have, you know, any of the analysts or scouting guys, I haven't seen it, and they probably would keep it to themselves because that's one of those situations they would be the lone voice in the wilderness screaming no. Um, so it's just kind of hard to discount how rarely there's a consensus on a top player position and going, well, there's pretty much one there at running back with a lot to like about him to back it up, you know. So I'm gonna say I'm not 100%. I can't say there is a couple of things um, that he would have to. I don't even know if overcomes the right word when you're talking about maybe is being a little smaller in stature and a little smaller in weight and what that could lead to. He could very well walk out on the football field for the NFL and never have a fumble issue. Give you the pass protection you're going to need when he does have to stay in and pass block, and go yes. And then we have all the benefits of his great running style and what he can do with the ball in his hands. So I can't go to 100% right now, but I can feel safely tell you I'm 90% or above, easy going. I think he's the guy at 9 that you have to consider that the only way you don't is you got to kind of weigh that against the uncertainty of this draft. Of I think everybody's pretty sure who's going to go first overall, but I don't even know if that's set in stone if Cam Ward gets drafted by the Titans. But after that, I think there is a lot of question mark, and there could be. I'll say the name: Cam Ward at quarterback, Abdul Carter at edge rusher. I think so far right now, Mason Graham on the defensive interior and Will Campbell on the as an offensive tackle. They're all the top guys at their positions. They're all likely to be top 10 picks. Throw in Ted McMillan for Arizona at wide receiver and Ty Warren at tight end. And we're going to talk, spoiler alert, more about those two in the next video. So are conditions where you can look and go, we could get the best guy at this position. Quarterback, tackle, edge rusher, typically 3 of the most important. Let's not even forget cornerback and Travis Hunter. Where you could easily go, look, I know Jeanty's special and he fits what we want to do, but so can some of those guys. And they can fix some needs. And the kicker is at 40, we still have the possibility, although we won't get Jeanty level talent, we're still going to get a top tier running back there. But we can't necessarily get a top tier quarterback, edge rusher, or whatever. I get that part of the argument. And I have to address it and acknowledge it and even put it out there that in there is a circumstance where come April and number 9 rolls around and Jeanty's still on the board, that I go because of one of those other names going, man, I hate doing it, but you got to take the other guy. But in my opinion, it's at that point maybe only going to be 1 or 2 names like Carter, like Ward, who aren't even going to make it out the top 5 and then realistically probably won't come into this conversation. So I'm pretty much on board where, yes, he's Alvin Kamara like, very much to the point where I can buy into that comparison. I'm not saying he's going to be as great as Alvin is, but definitely there's a possibility. And looking at what we think the new coordinator wants to come in and do, and he's kind of said he does, I think that would be a hugely valuable piece at a high level at a position of need. So I got to say, yeah, kind of. He is the next Alvin Kamara. And yeah, pretty much, I think he may be the legitimate pick at number 9 for the Saints. So in the comments below, let me know. 2 questions out there. Is he the next Alvin Kamara? And I'd like to rephrase that. Could he possibly be the next impact running back like Alvin Kamara, considering the style? And would you draft him at number 9 overall? I'm kind of a yes and a yes on both questions, but let me know what you think. If it's your first time here, please go ahead, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, share, hit the notifications, all the bells and whistles that, you know, got to get the YouTube algorithm to keep loving me. And we've been doing a great job of that so far. So I do appreciate that. Like I said, next video should be coming around Friday. And it was a coin flip whether I was going to do Tet McMillan and Ty Warren first and then Jeanty, or Jeanty, then the other two, Jeanty one. So that'll wrap up Jeanty. We'll move on to the pass catchers, the big pass catchers, and get all this in line for our live stream, which will be Monday. So until I see you next time, I'm Tim. Peace out and who dat.